welcome back to the Mighty Glue Stick. My name is AJ, nice to see you. So this is another monster video, yay! I know I've been doing a lot of crafting lately. It's just, you know, I love crafting miniatures and stuff, and I'm doing it with a passion lately. And those of you who have enjoyed those, great, there'll be more of those. And those of you who love my monster videos, more of these too. But I can't generally do both of them at the same time. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. Okay, so today I'm going to be continuing on my little tour of the Undead, and I'm going to start delving into the incorporeal creatures. Those are the ones that are without physical bodies, generally. And I'm going to start off at the start of the alphabet with the Banshee. Now, the Banshee has gone through a few iterations over the D&D's career, and at the moment, in 5th edition, it takes the form of a female elven spirit. Of course, you're not restricted to this. It can be a male elven spirit. It may not even be an elf. It could be gnomish or some other sort of fey creature. It doesn't matter. It could be a human. Any sort of race, anyway. But for their flavor text in this one, they've gone with the female elf. And the idea here is that the individual in life is so wound up with narcissism and its own beauty being used as a weapon, being used as a tool to manipulate and do evil things to others, that it lives on as a curse upon the living. This narcissism denies death itself and denies that anything has gone wrong and that it can still use its powers to manipulate others. And so it's still covetous and manipulative and evil. But it's also faced with its own mortality and the fact that it's a hideous undead thing now, and its worst nightmare has come true. And instead of reacting with sorrow or remorse about this and looking to end its existence, it drives the spike even further in its wedge, in its separation from empathy with others. So it becomes a being of wholly evil intentions. And it will use its sorrow like a martyr draws in victims. So it's, oh, woe is me, oh, my piteous existence, oh, I cannot leave this place where I was, you know, cursed with this horrible affliction. And as soon as you come close, it's, who are you to tell me that I am hideous? Ah! And it screams out its rage and reveals its horrific visage to others. So it is bound with its own sorrow, its own self-pity. It has no feelings for anyone else. It is completely locked into its own sense of its own curse, its own private hell. And that is really all there is. They are very one-dimensional in their emotional outlook. It's a woe is me and fuck everybody else. So in the form of, so they are undead creatures, and I'll go over a few things about incorporeal creatures. With the ghost, we can focus more on what they can do with the living. With the wraiths and things like that, we can concentrate on more how they're formed. With the Banshee, it's got a few sort of key points to it. Like the first one is that its mentality manifests itself in how it appears. Now, it has no physical form, so what you're looking at when you see a Banshee is its thoughts and feelings made manifest in your mind. So it has nothing there that is reflecting light off of to bounce back into your eyes. What you're seeing is what your mind is interpreting from this thing's psychic presence. Does that make sense? So when you see the Banshee, you are seeing its raw emotional state. So it cannot really disguise what it is unless it changes its mood. And that also means that as it becomes more enraged, or as it reveals itself, or as you see another aspect or its full force of its personality, at one moment it may appear as a beautiful elven maiden who's hunched over a stream or a portrait or something like that and crying, and looks beautiful and innocent. And then when it turns and reveals itself and you're suddenly aware of its full psychic force, that is when it is revealed as a horrific, decayed monstrosity that is so terrifying. that you want to get away from it. Not simply because you're looking at something which is evil, but you are feeling that evil directly into you. That is what your mind is interpreting. So it's you feel the taint of that psychic damage impinging on you, and that is what causes the fear reaction, the gut fear reaction, a fright way worse than any of the horrific things that you've seen crawling out of sewers and dank dungeons. Banshees are wrong. They are life and mentality gone so wrong that they persist after death. It's an individual who, upon dying, has drawn in negative energy to sustain itself, and therefore has cut itself off from any form of redemption. And an afterlife is denied the afterlife because it is so locked into the here and now, its own sense of entitlement to live. Anyway, so they are incorporeal. They can fly in a hovering motion at 40 feet around, which means that if a banshee is chasing you, it's almost impossible to get away from them because they are faster than you, generally speaking. They have immunity to being charmed, exhausted, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, or restrained. Now, interestingly, it's immune to being charmed or frightened because it is so locked into itself. It's like a reflection. It's like a record on skip. It's not really thinking about other influences around it. It's repeating its own mental exercise over and over and over again. It has such a lack of empathy that it pays no attention to anybody else, what they're saying, what they're doing, other than whether it's affecting their own internal monologue, whether it's affecting their own story that they're playing out over and over again. So it's an interesting point there. And in many supernatural shows and things, the way to get rid of an incorporeal spirit is to stop it repeating or stop its motive for existing in the first place. This is kind of like the mummy's curse. If you stop the conditions which cause the mummy to rise, then it will go back to its grave. If you stop the reason why the narcissistic, horrific spirit is predating upon the living, then it will go away. It's a bit more difficult with banshees though. So they have an arm class of 12 and 58 hit points. They're immune to cold and necrotic energy and poison. They're resistant to acid, fire, lightning, thunder, bludgeoning, piercing, slashing from non-magical weapons. So magical weapons do full damage, and it's like the magical force is passing through them and disrupting them. But other things can disrupt them too, because they believe themselves to be alive, and so if you slash through them with a sword, a part of them is going to believe that it has damaged them, so it's going to disrupt their tenuous grasp on the material plane, and they can't be destroyed this way. They have dark vision out to 60 feet. They have a passive perception of 10. They have, interestingly enough, and this can be very, very useful if you're using them in encounters with other undead creatures and things, particularly necromancers who can use banshees. Life sense. They can detect other living beings around them. Call it their narcissist, call it their martyr sense, right? They can feel the presence of others around them because they need the attention. Beautiful things need to be observed to be beautiful, and banshees need to be seen to do their damage. So they can magically sense the presence of creatures up to 5 miles away, and that's within the area of reality that they are locked into. So this is typically the range of motion of a living creature during its life. 5 miles pretty much encompasses the town or the castle or wherever the local village or whatever that this thing existed in. They don't really exist outside of that because, generally speaking, humanoid creatures don't travel an awful lot, or when they do, they go somewhere. But they spend a large amount of time within a 5-mile radius. It's like the range, the territory of the humanoid. They have incorporeal movement, which means they can move through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain, but they can't stop inside them. Otherwise, they'll take 5 points of or 1d10 force damage. So they can't coexist in the same space because they can't believe they can. It hurts them mentally. It's the same thing as existing in the same space as a big sword. It doesn't gel. And yeah, they have a corrupting touch because they are made out of necrotic energy, so they are negative energy. So they have a rotting touch to them, and it's cold and it's dark and it's horrible. It does 12 points of damage every time they touch somebody, or 3d6 plus 2. And yeah, any sort of physical touch will do that. A kiss or a brush or a punch or a claw, or yeah, they can move through somebody without damaging them, but any sort of physical effort where they reach out for you is considered to be an attack. They have a horrifying visage, which is one of their main things. Each non-undead creature within 60 feet of the Banshee that can see it must make a DC 13 Wisdom saving throw or be frightened for a minute. Now, this is one of those saving throws where if you make it, you're immune to that same effect for 24 hours. But just from that one Banshee, there could be another one nearby who will affect you just as viciously as the first one. Yeah, and basically you just want to stay out of sight of the Banshee. You don't want to be anywhere near that thing because it feels like it's corrupting you. And its wail, where it releases a mournful wail provided that it isn't in sunlight, interestingly. So most incorporeal creatures don't like being in sunlight. They just don't like it. It's not overly damaging to most of them, but they can't use their abilities to the best of their ability. I should rephrase that. They can't penetrate the life-giving rays of the sun. It's like they're constantly under a clerical effect of radiant energy, and it just suffuses everything, and it's not a good environment for them to be in. It's not damaging. I mean, a human being can move through pitch blackness, wading through murky water, but it's not a pleasant environment, and they don't feel at their best. So they can't really use their wail in sunlight either. This has no effect on undead creatures or constructs, but living creatures that are within 30 feet that can hear her or it must make a DC 13 Constitution saving throw. And on a fail, the creature drops to 0 hit points. On a fail, you drop to 0 hit points. On a success, the creature takes 10 psychic damage. Psychic damage. So this, if any of you have gone back through my video catalog and have seen the one where I'm having a rant about hit points, this just proves what I was saying before. What this thing is doing is it's not damaging you to the point of having 0 hit points. It's not ripping you apart or anything. What it's doing is it's removing your will to defend yourself. So if you're dropped to 0 hit points, you're basically standing there going, and somebody can just walk up to you and go, stab, stab, stab. Coup de grace. You're not helpless, but you've lost all motivation to live. It literally, the wail just takes away your will to survive. And even if you make it, it does psychic damage to you. So that is the power of the Banshee, is that ability to project its emotions and overwhelm your sense of self with its overwhelming focus on itself. So its selfishness and desire and martyrism and narcissism can overwhelm others around them, and they can project it out in a scream that takes away your own will to exist, so that all there is the Banshee. And it can pass that curse on to others, or that sort of death and destruction, that sense, that selfishness can linger like a cancer and cause others to turn to the dark side too. Banshees generally are one of the undead creatures that self-generate though, so it's an extreme individual, and everyone knew in life that this individual was not right at all. There was something seriously wrong with this person, and a Banshee in life probably had quite a reputation for being evil and conniving and completely callous, and using its beauty and stuff. So they'll be renowned for having their beauty, but it's a beauty queen with an acid tongue and very quick to sink a knife in the back of anybody who turned against her or him. So yeah, that's Banshees for you. You can very much weave them into the story. They are very much locked into the location that they come from. So you can learn about who the Banshee was. Very rarely are you going to encounter a Banshee that doesn't have a backstory behind it. They're not just sort of randomly encountered things. The Banshee will make you very well aware of its existence, its former life, because they're so focused on themselves that that's you get that overwhelming sense of who they are as soon as you encounter them. Or if you don't know who they are, they will tell you. They will scream it at you. So yeah, Banshees, first of the undead of incorporeal nature, and next I'll be talking about other incorporeal undead.